President Trump's call for, quote, domination, it has faced pushback. Some governors have spoken out. I had a story earlier this week about them having some concerns on a conference call. And Defense Secretary Mark Esper said he does not support invoking the Insurrection Act, a law giving the president the power to send the military to states.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act.
Esper's predecessor, General James Mattis, said in a statement that the president's actions were, quote, abuse of executive authority, and wrote that, quote, we must reject and hold accountable those in office who would make a mockery of our Constitution. Some Republicans, such as Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, called the general's comments, quote, true, honest, and necessary. The president, he has since pledged to defeat her. Paula, when you're talking to White House officials and they see General Mattis stepping out, who's often been quiet, what's the significance of that and of Secretary Esper making his own views clear?
Well, on Defense Secretary Esper, we know that publicly contradicting President Trump is not a good way to keep your job in this administration. But I will note he is still in his position as of tonight. And it's also important to note, even though publicly he broke with the president on this issue, sort of had to walk back a couple of things that he said, as of tonight, he has told most of the active duty military troops who came here to Washington to return to their home bases, though a few will remain on high alert. So even though the president and he had this public disagreement about this issue, it looks like in the longer term, he really prevailed. The defense secretary prevailed. And behind the scenes, I'm told that there are no imminent plans to fire the defense secretary. But as we know, here at the White House, things can change on a dime. In terms of former administration officials, it is significant to hear from the former defense secretary, James Mattis. It was just about 10 months ago that he told my colleague David Martin that he did not intend to publicly criticize President Trump. He called the president unusual, but said he wouldn't criticize him publicly. So to see the president being criticized by current and former defense officials, it is significant, and it doesn't do a lot to really bolster his arguments about law and order or the need to use active duty military.
Jonathan, when you see General Mattis speak out and you see Senator Murkowski do the same, do you actually see GOP cracks? Do you see a party that's considering breaking away at this moment or not?
I see two things. I see it affirming the decision of kind of former Republicans to stay former Republicans and support Joe Biden, or at least not vote for President Trump. But I also do see it sort of sowing some doubts among a smaller pool, Bob, of voters who are perhaps still deciding, who generally are Republicans, who are uneasy about voting for a Democrat, watching a Democratic presidency for 4 years, but really don't like President Trump that much, but just aren't sure if they can support a Democrat. I think when you have people like Mattis put this in the context of the country's security, I think it sort of does give that sort of voter pause. And I would just add, Bob, on Senator Murkowski, I mean, this to me is a vivid illustration of what a fallacy it is to suggest that President Trump operates with some sort of grand strategy. The cliche is the sort of five-dimensional chess. And this just completely disproves that. No political advisor in their right mind, let alone any GOP senator, would advise the sitting president to not only attack Senator Murkowski, but threaten to run her out of the Senate. And by the way, she didn't say that she was against Trump. She just said that she was struggling with how she was going to vote. She is an undecided voter, if you will. The most sort of cherished person for most politicians, and typically not the kind of voter that they threaten. And that's what President Trump did. It was confounding politically, but not terribly surprising.
Amna, when I was talking to some Republicans today on Capitol Hill, they said part of the reason, to build on Jonathan's reporting, that they're sticking with President Trump is because of the economy. They see this jobs report that's improving. But Amna, you've studied the numbers. There are still millions of Americans unemployed. And what's the reality for people of color in this country?
I mean, the reality is that it's still not a good picture. I mean, look, we've heard the president again and again talk about the fact that African-American unemployment numbers, Latino unemployment numbers under his presidency has been as good as they were, and they were. The pandemic changed everything. And as we are slowly starting to see, especially in today's surprising numbers where we saw some of those jobs numbers go back up, that is, again, in the way that most recessions have ended and the way that most down periods have ended in the United States, really helping one segment of the population more than the other, and that is white Americans. For all the non-employment numbers we've looked at, for Black Americans, that number actually went up, even though it went down for other communities. And so you look at Latino numbers and all the concern about unemployment hitting 20%, it nearly hit 20% for Latino Americans. And even among the Trump voters that I've spoken to, and I spoke to a lot in the lead up to the 2016 election and the ones I've kept in touch with, for many who, as Jonathan is saying, maybe held their nose, they weren't happy with the way that the president conducted himself or the candidate back then, they don't like his tweets, they don't want him weighing in on some of the issues he does, they were voting on the economy. They were voting on their jobs. They were voting on the fact that they thought it would help them. And they right now are asking themselves questions about whether that is enough.